Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, and I want to introduce you to our new series called Producing with Pro Tools. And today we have special guests on, Saunder and Danny. Are you guys there?
Yes.
Oh, that was awesome. Can't see your camera though. There you go. There you are. Amazing. Look at that background. That looks absolutely amazing.
It's a fake background that we created just for this.
It is?
No.
It looks awesome. I'm so excited for today's webinar. I'll give you a little introduction, even though you guys don't need it. You guys have done some amazing stuff in the past. A lot of the compositions you've done is for series that I've watched and kind of grown up on, I guess. Like, you know, Ozark's been a big part of my life because it's been absolutely amazing, and it's still talk about it till this day. And the music, the sound, everything about it, American Gods, The Gift, LA 92, there's so much stuff, and I can't wait to deep dive today and talk to you guys about your story. So I'll give you the mic there for a second. Maybe it'll be great to get an introduction from yourselves as well, to Danny and Saunder.
Cool, thanks. You want to start?
Hi, I'm Danny Bensi. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know what this morning.
Say a little bit about your, how you got into this stuff, I guess, before we met.
Oh, right.
Introduce ourselves, what we did before.
Yeah, let's see. Saunder and I, I'm from Europe. I was born in Denmark, and my dad is Italian and my mother's American. And I was raised in Denmark and England and Germany and Italy, and playing the cello and what have you. And then I came across to the States for college, studying the cello and classical music and getting a degree in music. And then I met Saunder actually in Rhode Island. This is in the late 90s. And we became friends. And I sort of joined his band a little bit. I was like a guest artist in a band that he was playing in. And we formed our own band and moved to New York. That's making a long story really short. And we've been playing music ever since, really.
Wow.
And I'm Saunder. I grew up in Seattle mostly. And I was a guitar player since I was 10 years old. And I always loved to record stuff. I had a 4-track very early, like a little tape 4-track stuff, and I would do like one-man band kind of thing. I had a little drum set and bass and a guitar, and I would do that when I was, in middle school and high school. And then I studied with private teachers mostly. I never formally studied music. I had a little classical training in my 20s. But yeah, so I ended up going to the Rhode Island School of Design for a year and then dropping out because I ended up playing music and not doing art. And that's where I met Danny. We had a mutual friend around there. And then we started playing together. And when we moved to New York, I can just tell our kind of history, how we fell into scoring from here, I guess. We moved to New York at the same time in 2001. And we'd just been playing together already for a few years, and we just really got along musically. We spoke the same language, and we were doing, I lived in this big loft in Bushwick, in Brooklyn, and had a really old PC set up with, I think I had Logic back then. I'm sorry, but just for a couple of years.
Hacked,
but it was it had like a really old, I think it was before they even did it for Mac. And we would sit down in the basement and just, Danny brought his cello, and we had a little out-of-tune piano down there, drum kit, and we just would make weird shit all day.
Weird little compositions.
Yeah. And they were somewhere between like kind of classical feeling compositions, but also with weird kind of, I don't know, whatever kind of strange stuff. We both kind of grew up on Iron Maiden and Zeppelin and a lot of metal stuff. And then also we really liked Radiohead in that time. So we were kind of, all the music was kind of mixing together into this strange mishmash. And then we met Greg Rogoff, who is our who became our drummer for a band, which was eventually called Priestbird, Priestbird. A lot of people get it wrong. And that was a kind of a weird psychedelic rock, prog rock band.
Wow.
And our, like we got into recording right away, and I think we started using Pro Tools right away, and we would kind of create these layers, these kind of layered atmospheres and textures especially with Danny on the strings, and there were three of us, and we all kind of were multi-instrumentalists at that point. And so we would have so much fun just layering stuff and creating these bigger than us compositions. And that translated eventually to the stage with a lot of like sampling pedals and effects and delays and stuff. So it became kind of part of our sound, this idea of building, almost orchestral textures on stage and in our recordings. And that's really where it all started with the film scoring stuff, is that we became so kind of quick and good at working in Pro Tools and creating these orchestral textures that we, eventually, when I think it was in 2009, when a good friend of mine, Alistair Banks Griffin, asked us to score his feature film, which was called Two Gates of Sleep. And we kind of had all this under our belt. And we're like, sure, we've never done this. We don't know what we're doing. We're a little, maybe a little intimidated, but we were in my apartment at that point in Brooklyn, and we just did what we did
On a laptop.
with the band on them. Yeah, we had a laptop and I think one mic and a bunch of instruments and percussive stuff and Danny on the strings, and we just went for it. And we had such a good time doing it, and it felt so natural. And the film came out really good. It went to Cannes when it came out, and it was 2010. And from there, it just really snowballed. I mean, people just from there we did. I think the next movie was Martha Marcy May Marlene, which was directed by the producers of Two Gates of Sleep. So we kind of, made a network in New York there was a pretty flourishing independent film scene at that time. And we kind of got in with that movement and just kind of, we never sought to be film composers. We kind of fell into it, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And now we're here.
It's
Wow.
weird. I could speak to that a little bit, like again, going like about layering the strings in Pro Tools was like, for me, just absolutely the funnest thing I could possibly think about doing. Like as a string player and wanting to learn how to write, I didn't study orchestration or any of that. I played in orchestras, of course, and all sorts of ensembles, but and sort of generally listening to how textures are done, but I'd never like sought to like try to do it by hand, or I never, I didn't take composition classes. So learning in Pro Tools and like being like, oh, I can layer and see it and move things around and put reverb and pan them. And at that point, now I do a lot of the strings. I play the violin and viola as well and try to get those textures in. But at that time, we just had the cello. So we're starting really low on the cello. And
Really?
yeah, and then go really high, trying to emulate violins. And then be like, oh my God, we actually can't go more than like 10 or 11 cellos right now, because that sound is all just sort of clumping together and getting too thick, and we're trying to EQ it. But my whole thing was being able to sort of see it on the screen and move it around and let's mute that little part. And oh, that texture is better now. And like, we've got way too much. Look at it all. And like, it was almost like a new visual experience for music, and being able to kind of be like, yeah, it even looks good. Like after we've sort of excavated parts and like moved it, now you can kind of see it there and you color code it. And I was like, this is how to write now. And I became very excited, because before that I'd been very apprehensive about writing, because I thought it was like a quill and like old music paper and like, oh, you have to know how to notate. Yeah, you have to know how to orchestrate properly for the violins. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, well, there are people that know exactly how to do that. And I don't really know like all of the ranges and stuff. So I was always like, oh yeah, let's leave it to the people who know what they're doing. But then we're like, well, actually, we can kind of, just by listening and trying, like, and we got better and better at it. And actually, in doing so, we were able to kind of start new techniques. Like, well, why do we need to have 5 cellos in the cello section? What if it's just one, and we can really hear the bow on the hair and really understand like what it's playing? Like, actually, this is a quintet for this film. And like certain scenes, say in Martha, Marcy, and Marlene, are actually just small ensembles. They're not orchestral, like, you know, hit the whole viola section and there's that filmy sound we all know. Like, let's try some new sounds, and we don't really know what we're doing anyway, so who cares? Like, we love the sound and the director likes the sound, so let's move forward. And that's kind of how we started, with this sort of experimental sort of string writing and piano and what have you. And Pro Tools made it all very, very easy.
Wow, I love the idea of kind of like visually as well. That sounds so, well, it looks so cool. That's pretty awesome. And then as you guys are a duo, how do you, so a question that I have actually is like, how do you guys split roles? Like, you know, do you start separately and then kind of send ideas over? Or, you know, do you have a conversation beforehand and say, okay, we're going to do this, you're going to do this? How is it kind of done?
I think, like, you know how like in a band, if you've ever been in a band, how you come up with your part, you kind of, you're like, hey, drummer, like, can you just keep that beat going while I sort of work out my bass part? And like, guitarist, can you just keep playing that around? And then they're like, yeah, you can do it. And like, and you're like, oh, I'm working it out, I'm almost there. And like, you sort of learn to compose and perform and get into the part with these musicians in the room. You have to become comfortable, right? And like, and learn kind of how to do that and set, you know, you're not like, yeah, you have to gain confidence in that area. Saunder and I had been playing in a band for a long time already, and like spent hours and hours on the road, but also in the studio, like trying to come up with parts and new songs and things. So we're very, very comfortable already. When we started scoring, it was the same idea. We're both in the same room as we are now, and we'd be like, all right, well, we got this first scene to do. What should we do? Like, well, I've got this idea on the piano. Let's see if that works. And I'll walk over, or Saunder will walk over and start doing it and be like, oh, that's great. Let me hit record on that. And then we sort of work together to be like, oh, or let me try putting cellos on top of that. Hey, that's going to be great. Yeah.
It was really an improvisational process.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, even now where we don't necessarily always work together in the same room anymore. We will actually work remotely between our studios, which are close by, but we still, you know, like, it's still an improvisational process when we write. You know, it's not like we're writing things out and there's not a lot of like thought put in beforehand of harmonies and stuff.
Very,
we just like try everything
in the moment. Yeah.
So, and then our roles are kind of, I mean, in terms of like a project, we'll really switch off. You know, Danny might take the lead on a certain project for the beginning and then pass it over to me, and I'll change it up and add some things and then send it back to him. And then maybe at some point I'll take that over. It really depends on the show or the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having worked in the same room for many years, it's like we just know each other. Do you know what I mean? So you can be like, oh, Danny, I started a cue. Go check it out and see what you think and let me know. And then I'll be like, oh, let me try a little work on it. Oh, I'm going to add some strings, or I'm going to mute some things. And then when I say, oh, I worked on your cue a little bit, have a look. And they'll be like, oh, I love it, or whatever. And let's send it. And then so it kind of goes back and forth, and we sort of chip away at it from our respective studios now. And because we have a lot of work, so it has to be that way. It came by necessity, because we're like, oh, we're able to take another project on and buy another computer, right?
It's like you guys have already got the chemistry in the studio, so you know how exactly what the other person's going to do, and help each other out, which is awesome. Yeah. So I thought it'd be awesome now to maybe show this session, and we can have a little deep dive about the session, see what you guys do. Because I know we had a conversation yesterday, and we were saying that you keep it nice and simple and let the music do the work. And I can't wait to see that. And we can see your screen.
Great. So I guess we're not supposed to say the film.
We're not supposed
I don't
to.
know. Better not. But this is a pretty classic kind of setup for us. You can tell Danny took a long time labeling his tracks.
Why?
These are all, we do have a thing here, but what we usually do is we'll have a bus. And this is, we work with a score mixer, Phil McGowan, who's a genius and who will constantly yell at us about our layout. So nobody should do this because he has to print stems and stuff. So he has to kind of put it all into his template. We really like the way we use Pro Tools is really like for the fastest, most efficient way to be creative. So the way that we've kind of found to do that is to have these I don't know why this is called pinkies, but you're really getting a glimpse into it. There might be some bad words in here.
Yeah, we should check.
But so, we set up a bus. Usually we have a main music bus up here, a reverb, so that we can just have the same reverb on everything. And then we have each group of instruments usually has its own bus so that we can control the volume really easily. We just duplicate a track and we're quickly just going at it. It's all so that we can get to recording as fast as possible.
Wow.
Play a little bit of this. So there's a little,
Wow.
and then you can
Wow.
see here we have, the cello melody. This is all Danny later. This
Wow,
particular
Danny.
project is not an orchestra budget, so we did not hire an orchestra, and we do a lot of our stuff this way. Especially, it's great for television if there's not a budget for orchestra. But you'll see, we have all these different textures. Double, triple, quadruple.
And you'll see what Saunder said before, like making it as fast as possible in Pro Tools. Because knowing, should I add another cello? Should I add a viola? Like, does this need more strings? I don't know. Do I hear a counter melody? Does it need one? Like all of those slight decisions that you have to make writing, like me personally, if I get an idea, I don't want to lose it. And I hate having to click, 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 make new track, click, click, and just let me write. Let me play the damn thing. And I love having all the tracks and just being able, and you're being like, all right, just pan that over to the right. And I'm going to turn it down. Maybe I'll use it. Maybe I won't. But it's almost like painting. I need it to be really, really quick. Yeah. I don't need,
That's
I can't
amazing.
taking time to create tracks and busting. It's very important.
Yeah. And so we'll create like a bunch of tracks, and then this will be the record track, and we'll just record the first part on here, move it down, record the next part, move it down, and just that's how it goes. It's just boom, boom, boom. It takes
super fast.
Like this cello line, it's 4 cellos on top, it'll probably take 5-10 minutes.
No, because when I do it,
he doesn't fuck up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Once you've figured out how to play the line, and it's the right interpretation and the right amount of vibrato and the right amount of like pressure, then you have to copy yourself as if you're in the orchestra. Like, the guy next to me is playing it just kind of like the way I am, but maybe a tiny bit different. And so you sort of move a little bit and play it a little bit, so you sound like 4 different people playing in a group.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't go around
amazing.
the room and like move to the other side. I just sort of scoot to the side.
Sometimes we'll do room mics and stuff at the same time. You make a little group of the room mic with the main mic. But I'll just show you kind of also like we both have this setup where we just have this. We have a nice old vintage Neumann that we just do you have this arm now too?
I haven't put the arm up, but I do have an
But
arm.
you know, it just stretches all over
Oh,
this
so
area,
good.
so we can record
Oh,
all the
nice.
percussion,
Yeah.
strings, everything.
And I have the
that's around.
same mic in my studio, so that helps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, it sounds, again, like listening to that just sounds so beautiful. And I saw there wasn't many plugins on there either. But it's just interesting to see, like, when you look at different projects from different producers, you know, some sessions would have so many things going on. And then some sessions are very, very empty, and the music's doing the talking, which is amazing. And I love that. And that kind of leads me on to the second part, which I was going to ask you guys was, I saw that I saw an article online basically that said that it's not just about the music that you guys wrote, but it's also about the way it's played. And I know you was kind of briefly mentioning a second ago, but it'd be awesome to get some more on that, because that really hit me. I was like, wow, that's meaningful.
That's like music interpretation. It's like musicianship, right? It's like it's like. Oof, I don't even explain it.
It's for us. It's so important because and I think we might be a little different than a lot of film composers, that we literally play almost everything that we record. I mean, we do write for other instruments and for orchestra and stuff, but we really started just like, we didn't know how to do any of that stuff. That was all kind of came with the project as we got them. But so for us, kind of honing our skills. And I mean, Danny had been playing cello forever, but we knew the value in the way you play the drum instead of like on a MIDI keyboard, or all of that stuff, the way you hit it, the tone of it, the way it's mic'd, all of that stuff comes through in the music. I mean, with film scores, it might be something that's in the background, or something supporting the film, obviously, and maybe you don't think that you hear that kind of quality, but it's a character that comes through in the performances of it. It's you can, at least we can tell when something has just been completely quantized and MIDI mock-upped and then recorded to an orchestra. Obviously it sounds beautiful as a live orchestra, but it doesn't have the life that happens when you improvise or kind of sit with it yourself and really like focus on that performance. And even when we do orchestra, we try to be in the room with the players. Danny often will conduct, and like, we draw that performance out of them. It's not, we don't just like give them some sheet music and go, okay, here you go. And then some other conductor does it. Oh, great. And then we get it back a week later or whatever. We really want to like explore like the emotionality behind the playing. And yeah, I mean, that to us, it's what makes our music special. Like all this stuff, anybody can do this stuff. Anybody can layer strings and play. If you're good at playing the violin or the cello and you learn Pro Tools, you can do it. But it's all that the details that I think come out, and that's so important to us, and that's what we hear in music that we love too. So
it's like that. Have you ever heard a drummer like it's like he's like or like when people are like, you can just whack a drum. Anybody can hit a drum. No, you can't. Like, if you really know how to hit a drum, like exactly how to hit that skin, and also how to tune it so that the whole thing is resonating properly. Like, I didn't know anything about that until my drummer showed us, and he was spending hours like tuning before a show, and I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, skin's on there. It sounds pretty good. It sounds good to me. Doing. But then, like, when it's right, and he's like, now check it out. It's like, boom.
Wow.
And and you're like, oh, right. Oh, okay. Oh. But he actually taught us a lot about, he has all these different like percussions, like say even a tempo block like this Chinese tempo block. Is Chinese or Japanese? Yeah, Chinese tempo block. And it's like, oh yeah, just whack it, right? Like whack it. But no, it's like there's a million sounds you can get out of this tiny thing. We use it all the time. But like whether you hit it, and like, does that work, or does that work? And then, all right, so we recognize there's a myriad of sounds that you can get from it. So what's going to work for this scene? How hard should we hit it? I don't know. And it's like, well, what's the intent? And then you're like, okay, and then what's the culture? And what do we do? And you have to learn how music works and how to express it and how it matches the scene. Like, or do you just take the MIDI sample and hit tempo block? And it's like, boom, you know, and you're like, oh, that sounds pretty good. Stick it in. But
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does, but what if you're really there, like near the microphone, and you're looking at the scene, and you're like, and she smiles, and you're like, you know, it's like, oh, that's it.
And then
It's
you go
the
into
feeling,
markup
right?
and you move it just a second later, and you're like, oh, that is really good. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean,
Tell me what.
it's like the feeling, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like how you feel, the emotion, and stuff like that. So I was going to ask you guys about a big project, Ozark. So how did that come about? Because I mean, that sound, I've no words.
Ozark
It's amazing. How
Thank
did that come about?
that we met Jason Bateman through, I think first through Charlie McDowell, who directed The One I Love, which is a film we did back in early 2012, 2013, maybe even earlier. I don't know. One of the first films we did, and then I think we met him at a premiere in New York or something. He loved the music. He asked Charlie about us, and then we happened to get the gift. Get hired on the gift a few months maybe after that, and met him again at that premiere. And that was at that point he had been, I think they were just writing Ozark and starting to put it together. And he came to us and said, "I got the perfect project for you. I'm doing a TV show." We're like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "You guys have done TV, right?" Yes. We hadn't done any at that point. I don't think. I think we did one episode of the OA or something. But so he knew our music. He knew a lot of our music, and he there was no like hiring process. There's no competition or anything. He just hired us before they even started shooting. And we had a lot of conversations with him before they started about the tone of the show, because the tone of the show is really, really special and unique. And so he just, he told us about where it was being shot, what his colors, what he wanted the colors to look like, the darkness of it, just everything. He's really good at explaining that to us. And he has a really amazing musical sense. He's a aficionado, classical music and everything. So he knew how to talk to us about music too, and not in like a way of like major chords and minor chords and modulations. He knew how to talk about emotion in music. And so we immediately kind of had a synergy with him. And we at that point we asked for them to send us dailies and stuff as they were shooting, so we were getting the vibe and the pacing and stuff way before we saw a complete episode. And so we kind of started coming up with the palette right from there. Like we had all this kind of junk percussion that was a basis for a lot of it that we recorded, like these pipes and plastic and glass bottles and stuff to kind of offset. There's this kind of the Ozark, that region that has this kind of trashy kind of motorboat truck, like abandoned house kind of feeling, but with this kind of beautiful, majestic feeling of the nature there. So that we brought in with a lot of these kind of low, stark strings and the occasional piano if something emotional happens, very rarely. But it was really like that. The process was so, and we were lucky. It's not always like this, but it was so organic and so easy. And Jason was wonderful to work with because he was just so succinct in his notes and comments and stuff. And he really let us do what we do, rather than trying to control every part of it. And from there, we just kept doing it, and yeah, it's been a really fun experience.
That was one of our first scores where we were also like distorting almost everything.
Oh yeah, everything was
tons of distortion on
we used a lot of the devil lock from
Devil Lock, Decapitator. I'd be like, Decapitator, number one. That's all I can do because it's too much.
I love that.
Even on the low cellos, see, what was that dude? Yeah. Or like a drum, like one of our favorite drums is this Argentine bombo.
Wow.
And like it's got a nice
awesome.
It's bad. It's also got it's a bit crusty right now, but like what happens to Decapitator on that, and like because it can kind of compress the sound, but it still has this like and it's like, wow, just that drum plus a couple of cellos and then a couple of synths.
Yeah, and everything is super dry. There's barely any reverb.
Yeah.
Well, if we do another one of these with Phil McGowan, he can talk about how he fought his reverb instincts.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Return.
I mean, so on so you said you use synths, right? How did you go about the sound selection? How did you go to kind of choose something or kind of like create something? That must have been a process in itself, right? Selecting a specific sound to match the emotion or the color that was described.
I mean, all the synth stuff we use is analog synth stuff. I mean, we won't use any of the software synths, but when we run it through MIDI, so we can use a MIDI keyboard or like move stuff around and change it pretty quickly. Nice. But even when we use synths, we use them like and I think that the best uses of synths are always like this, but we use them like they're instruments. And the fun thing about synths is that both Danny and I are not very good at them. And we're kind of just like twisting knobs and randomly. I don't know what this does, but it sounds cool. But we know what we want, and that's this. We always want it to sound organic, and it needs to sound like it's a human playing it. Unless we're really specifically going for a robotic synth sound or something, which happened on some other projects for sure. But even then, it's like any imperfection that we can find, we leave in, or we create as much chance of imperfection as possible. I mean, like any little flubs that we just, all that stuff that's our favorite stuff.
A lot of our ads too are made from like taking a singing bowl, something like that, and getting that sound, and it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows that sound. It's like that meditation bowl. But what happens if you time stretch it a little bit and then EQ all the high end off? Yeah. What is it then? It's like a boom, 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 and like, oh, it's got its own rhythm built in. We played it, we recorded it, it's ours, and I want to use it. And it's not like, oh, I got this from some software thing and I just press the key and it sounds woo, but I didn't play it. It's like, it's so much more fun once you've played it and you're like, oh, I love that simple thing that we used, and like, let's bring that in and then play on top of that. It's much more like, oh, I'm excited because it's our sound.
And all that stuff goes into a big library that we have.
Yeah, library.
Textures and sounds and pads, and so.
That's amazing. It's so cool to see how people would pull out sounds and create sounds. That's amazing. The question that I wanted to ask was, did you feel any kind of pressure on a massive project compared to kind of the previous ones? Obviously there would have been a time frame with this that was obviously really strict, as it would have been with older ones. But did you feel any pressure with Ozark or kind of creating for Ozark, or did you just kind of let it flow and just get it kind of over the line kind of thing?
I mean, I think there was pressure in the fact that it was our first episodic series. We had no idea it was going to be such a big hit. I mean, we knew it was good, but there were a lot of good shows happening, and so
True Detective.
There's a lot of.
We didn't know it was going to be a big show.
We thought people were just going to, oh, it's just like Breaking Bad. And we're just copying. That's not what it was, and
we didn't know.
I mean, we didn't. I mean, that definitely didn't color our kind of composition. We didn't feel pressure to like create something special because it was going to be a big show. We just really got in there and did what we do. Yeah,
I mean, that speaks to more like the composer director relationship, which is a whole separate sort of conversation. But like, when things are great between the director and the composers, and then it's like, because I love it, it's great. I mean, we have egos, and it's like, you tell us you really like something, we're like, great. Like, we made a piece of art, it's gonna go into this project, whether it's a big film or a small film or a TV show. And when you're told it's really good and the whole team loves what you're doing, and you're only on episode 1, it's just like such a great to keep writing, right? Yeah. And Ozark was like that since day one. Or everything we said, he's like, I love it. And we were like, yes, this is great. And it was so almost soothing to work on. It was great. Yeah. We've had the other side though, everybody. We've had the other side where it's like,
not working.
Not working. What's not working?
I remember
Us,
I
we're
remember
composers.
I remember watching it with my brother, and he was like, "You watching it?" And I was like, "No, I think I'm listening." And he's like, "No, you got to watch it." And I was like, "I can't, man. I'm actually listening." I was like, "I'm generally just like so intrigued by everything going on," which I'm sure a lot of people would have felt as well, right? um, then something that grabbed my attention was LA '92 and the Fuse. I absolutely, that emotionally grabbed me. The sound selection, the kind of the strings, everything about it was so beautiful. And I just thought it'd be great to kind of get your thoughts in it and how that came about as well.
You know, it's funny. I remember about that is that piece was an opera first. Remember, we had composed an opera
Oh,
piece for the end of the film.
are you sure that's the same scene?
I think so. Yeah, and then we replaced it.
I think so. I'm not sure. That opera scene was really long.
Yeah.
Is it shorter?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong. But we did have to do that.
It didn't go in the film, but
yeah. We'll tell you about the Fuse, but that was another thing where I was like, they had a like a Puccini aria.
oh,
Not only that was the aria, but they had like cut it up a little bit and elongated it.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like, and they're like, guys, we can't license this. Maybe you want to write an aria. And then I'm being a bit Italian, half Italian. I was like, I'd love to try writing an aria. I've never even thought about that. And it was such
we did it.
We did it. Yeah, we hired a singer, and it was pretty good. It's not bad. I mean, we had to do it in like 2 days.
Nobody will ever hear it.
Yeah, it never it sits on our desktop. But anyway, so that didn't work out, but it was good. It was a good exercise. The Fuse, was all that is it's a low D on the pedal of an organ. That is a MIDI sample. I personally love that sound. Saunder's like, stop using that bloody pedal. But I love it because it's got like a airy, and then it reminds me personally of like being in a church. And I wasn't religious growing up at all, but I did play many, many years and sang in choirs and in churches. So I understand this kind of, the glory and the sort of otherworldliness of behind of playing in a church and the reverb. And so as soon as I personally put my headphones on and press that organ pedal, I suddenly become like a part of that church. Or something. Do you know what I mean? I'm like,
Wow.
I'm in classical music world. And glory be to God. I love this music. I'm not religious, but I know the glory. So anyway, the Fuse is kind of similar to that in that it's a single instrument playing its arpeggios, the violin, with such longing, and it could almost be played if you played it like an exercise, because it's like it could sound like kind of like a regular exercise. But we had this wonderful violinist in New York play it. And she played it with a ton of romantic feeling and longing, and really trying to emulate, and growing and growing and growing, and then it sort of peters out at the end as you. But the chords are all sort of very classical, dark, and evocative chords, which made sense for the end. As there's that sort of montage of like, where the director was trying to show like the cyclical nature of these riots happening every sort of 20 to 30 years. And I was like trying to make you think and really get into that moment in sort of a quiet way, as opposed to like this big orchestral, we're going to make you feel that way. It's like, so the solo violin, when done correctly, it can be very, very powerful.
Wow. That is amazing. Definitely. A lot of the stuff you guys have done just really grabs my attention and emotionally grabs me, which I could tell you guys put a lot of emotion into that. And it's probably a bit cliche, but you was in the music, which is awesome. So we've got, I'm going to give it another 5-10 minutes before we go and answer some of the Q&A. So lastly, I just wanted to touch on, and I know Saunder, you might laugh at this one maybe a little bit, is your whistling in the American Gods, the God of Sun. That was, I didn't know that. And that was Pretty cool. Do you want to maybe give a little insight on that one?
You know, my father is not a musician, but he's a avid, like he's a classical music lover, and he's a music lover. And it's funny because you know I grew up with him. He was listening when I was young to the Beatles and a lot of jazz and a lot of classical music, and most of it I was like, and Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden. And now I listen to a lot of the music he listened to when I was growing up. But he is an incredible whistler, a really fantastic whistler. I mean, vibrato and just like just I don't know,
range.
Yeah,
range.
Man, that's awesome.
So maybe that's where my music comes from, because I don't have any other musicians in my family that I know of. And I, for that, I mean, I think every once in a while we pulled it out for things. I don't know. That was maybe the first kind of like bigger thing that came out that I whistled on. And yeah, I don't know. It's hard to record a whistle because there's so much air coming out. You got to put the pop filter in front, do a little EQing.
Wow.
But
and did you use the same microphone there? Was that the same mic that you used, or was it? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I had a last question for maybe each of you, or you can answer it together. Kind of, what is your favorite Pro Tools feature? Would you guys kind of do either every session, or you kind of rely on it, or like it's something that you have in the back of your mind when you're recording and you know you're going to go to that feature or that tip and trick, let's say?
God, I don't know. I mean, there's just so many. It really is like, I think about this a lot. It is a integral kind of instrument in our process. Like, I think it's just, I mean, I don't know if there's any one thing. It's that for me, it's the ease of the editing. God.
Oh, I can continue that. It's the ease of the editing. And I'm talking right down to just the little 2-hour waveform and being able to zoom in. And this one note is a little out of tune, and I'm not going to use what's it called, Melodyne and all that. I get too complicated with that. I'll go right in, split it up, tune it down a few cents or up a few cents. Also be able to turn it down or up dBs.
The clip gain is great.
Clip gain, and then and also being able to move and see that little shadow behind it, so I can like replace another note and just stick it right on top. All that kind of like visual. Yeah, I love all that.
I mean, I was almost an artist. I went to art school, and for me, like the visual aspect of it is huge. Like, you know, and it's something with the film too, and seeing the film in the timeline and the waveforms themselves. It really is something that, you know, like I think a composer from another age just couldn't even fathom what that would be like, you know. And it's a whole new way of composition. It's a modern way of composition, and it's fantastic.
We should expand the color ranges and backgrounds and like really get into it. You know what I mean?
We're really into the colors.
Yeah, colors is big one. Yeah,
make it your canvas, right?
Yeah, it really is. We
actually look at this damn thing all day.
Yeah, we talk a lot about our compositions as sculptures, actually, and like the way we work together as you know, usually building up and then chipping away at things. And it really feels like that. You know, everything is in the session and either muted or hidden, but it's there, so we can always pull it back up and maybe copy it, paste it over here, move that over here, put a layer that wasn't supposed to be over this layer on top of that layer and see what happens. I mean, that's what we do all day long.
Experimenting with that. That's a great one. That's a great one. Like, oh, this needs some low end stuff. Well, I've got some low end pads from over here. I'm just going to throw them on there for a second. They don't even belong to that piece of music. I'm just going to stick them over there, and then press play and try to nudge it. And nah, it's not right. And then you know, command Z, and stick it back. And then, you know, but it's really like having, you know, like these hands like doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like a third person, right?
Yeah, like a little like happy assistant, except when it gets unhappy. Yeah, like, why isn't this working?
It's usually our fault.
Yeah. From a very simple sort of level, that's our favorite features.
No, it's amazing. I love that. So guys, that's me done with my questions. And now I'm going to hand it over to the Q&A. So I'm going to read some of these out, and
Great.
then you guys could answer them. I'm going to pick a few out. So we have, apologies if I get your name wrong. It's Paul Kayanji. Any challenges with working remotely when one is having a creative block between the two of you?
Well, that's why being two is so effective, when like one person is feeling blocked or low self-esteem, the other person can prop them up. And that happens all the time. I mean, that's like I think on every single project, there's a point where I'll just kind of, text or FaceTime all flustered. This all sucks. Why don't you check it out? I hate it.
Yeah.
And then he'll open it and then call me in an hour. This is great. This is all great. I just muted a few things and added a string here, and it all sounds great. And so, I mean, that's like a regular day for us.
That's regular. Regular.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And then we have,
I feel for any composer that's by him or herself.
Yeah.
It's part of it. It's part of it. And just because we're doing really well in our careers, that doesn't mean we don't have the same difficulties when it comes to coming up with material and something that you like.
And be the fear of starting new things and coming up with something special for this product keeps us up at night.
Yeah.
and have you had moments before, actually, just a question, follow-up for myself, as you know, I have so many questions. Do you ever get kind of into a composition where you really think, you know what, it's not going to work, scrap the whole idea, we're going to start fresh? Has that happened many times before? Or do you say you work on that existing project and just say, we're gonna stick to this, we put the hours in, let's just stick to it?
I mean, yeah, we scrap stuff all the time, but we first make sure that we both check it out, because one of us will often hear something in that we didn't hear in our own music. So we're very careful with that stuff. And the way we set up our kind of workflow and stuff is that we don't throw anything away. If we start a new version, even if we don't like the old version, we save it and it goes into the old folder or whatever. And then, we try to remember what's there. It gets overwhelming sometimes, but yeah, I mean, we don't throw anything away, right?
Yeah. That's a good lesson. It sounds like a cliche lesson, but for all you younger composers out there, keep everything and keep a track of everything. All those folders, old things, even if the director didn't like it or whatever, you keep
it's all your music. And
you never know. It can go on for months, some projects, or even years, and you might have to go back for some reason. It could be a legal reason, but it could also be a creative thing, and you need to go back and reference. Oh, they want it back. You want that music back? What session was it? And I don't know. They didn't tell us. So you got to go all the way back like a year sometimes and be able to find stuff.
Yeah.
But at the time, you're like, no one's gonna want this. It's crap. Yeah, just throw it away. Put it in the trash. No, don't do that. You never know. You never know.
No, I love that. It's so true. I think someone actually wrote, so hello everyone, which technique and gear you use for saving all files you need? From my experience, my external hard drives, almost all of it will one day crash and get broken. So how do you deal with that? And that's from Zdenek Kansky.
When you figure it out, let us know. We just recently bought one of these NAS network whatever hard drives. It's like 32 terabytes to throw all our old projects on. But I mean, look, there's no, I mean, actually, Phil McGowan, our mixer, would be a great person to ask about this. He's got like redundant backups of everything.
Wow.
But we are, that's like a constant thing that we're trying. We work actually, so all of our sessions and everything, we work on the Dropbox, so that Danny and I can constantly be sharing in real time everything, and then also with our assistants and writers. And so it is backed up on the cloud automatically, all the current stuff we're working on. So that's one thing. And then we have a time machine hooked up to our computers, and then this kind of big backup drive. But it's pretty overwhelming. And that's another thing that, if I could tell some advice I would give is to start figuring that out early. And so you don't end up like us with like over 100 projects on this kind of rickety old drive that you don't know if it's going to last and you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
That's,
you don't
that's
have
where we're
ports-
at now.
You don't have ports for it anymore.
Yeah,
For Christ's sake.
Firewire 400.
Yeah.
So next question is from Greg Verriard, and he says, what are your favorite TV or film scores or sound design and why? And also ones that you didn't create.
Oh, the ones, so the favorite ones of ours?
No, so ones that you haven't created.
Okay, so other people's.
So someone else's, yeah.
I love all the True Detective, the first season, especially of True Detective. That was an amazing TV, like episodic score. The Fargos are awesome. What did we want? The White Lotus. That is awesome.
That was great.
Really blew both of us away.
Yeah.
Such a great score.
Films.
What are some
Contemporary films?
whatever?
Oh my God.
I mean, we love all Johnny Greenwood stuff. That's also a cliche, but we love his stuff. Every single film he did.
Nicholas Britell.
Yeah,
We love all our contemporary. They're all great.
Yeah.
They're all great. Everyone's doing great things.
I loved Dan Romer's score
Dan
for
Romer.
Luca because it just felt so different from all the Disney stuff that kind of, or the animated
so
stuff
fresh.
that came before. It felt, again, that felt live and it felt alive. Didn't feel like disembodied in a way, I guess.
God, it's a hard question.
Yeah.
It's a hard question to answer, isn't it?
It is. The next one is from Chris Bailey, and he asks, are you composing to the sync of specific scenes or pulling sounds and themes from your library that seem like they fit?
Good question.
I don't know if I understand it.
It's both.
Yeah,
It's both. So taking sounds
Bit of
from
both.
our library that we think could work. I mean, that's film composing step one, isn't it? Like, what's going to sound good for this? Well, we just have to try it. But where do I even start? Some pads from somewhere or whatever.
Yeah, or we create them in the moment.
Or create them in the moment. Yeah, like I don't feel like grabbing, or it's like I want something. This scene or this series or this TV show or this film needs its own pad or whatever. Like, let's create this first sound. We did that for The Gift. The very first sound that you hear at the beginning is its own sort of pensive pad, which is like,
Wow.
What was it?
It's just kind of, I don't know, there's some slowed down thing, and then, but it just sounds just like,
Enemy had it.
and then the piano comes in, right, and then takes you into the cue. But that first sound is that we put that all over the score, and that's like part of the DNA of the score.
Yeah, we like to have that kind of that first period of experimentation to kind of create this textural identity to the project. Sometimes it is something from our library. We have so much in there that it doesn't ever get old yet. We keep adding to it, but for Enemy, one of the it's all over the film. It was almost like a backdrop to the whole film. Was we recorded. We had two giant amplifiers in an ISO booth with two distorted guitars, just cranked all the way up, and we just let it feed back for like 30 minutes and recorded it stereo, two mics, and then took that and time stretched it, did all sorts of, ran it backwards, did all sorts of crazy stuff with it, and that became this crazy, like, undulating backdrop for the whole film.
Oh yeah, it was one of our favorite pieces of sort of art to work with, because there's these long distortions. Like, it sounded so cool and it was so powerful, and you took out all the high end and it's like, it was like,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So, and you would have a note, you'd be like, oh, that's an A or something, and then it'd be like, and then go to like a G sharp or something, and you're like, oh my God, take that moment when it changes and put it right when we're changing scene right there. And now let's build a piece on top of that A going to that G sharp. All right, let's get the strings, let's get it there, let's get some pads, and then build just based on this gorgeous shift that you've recognized happen just in this 5-second moment of this distortion extravaganza that we recorded. But that's the fun part.
Yeah.
because that the building block is like, oh, I found it, and it's like, oh, this is great. This shift is like an orchestra shifting, but they're all like an orchestra of zombies or something, and they're all like, and that's the sound I want for that moment. Great.
I love that. So we have one time for one more question. And I kind of like this one. I really like this one, actually. So it's by Michael Moxham. So I'm curious if there have been any major letdowns and how those were handled. I'm always curious about how we handle failure. And I just want to add a little bit on that as well. At the end of that, if you can give a little bit your advice to someone, I guess, with that question in mind as well. Just advice for someone starting out. They want to start composing, get into film, get into TV. Yeah.
Failure is, I mean, it's such a, it's like, did you fail yourself or did you fail the project? I mean, I don't think we have been bounced off of a couple of projects, maybe, I think. Yeah. Maybe there's plenty of projects where I maybe feel like we didn't get what we really should have, whether it was our fault or it was the synergy between us and the director, or, you know, I think we're too busy to think about it, honestly. Like, it's like, I mean, I don't think it's like the idea of a mistake. There's no mistake that you can't use to your advantage. And I think the same thing with like, you like a failure. What is a failure? You wrote a cue and it's no good and the director doesn't like it. That can be bruising, but you need to just put that kind of feeling aside, because you're going to deal with that for the rest of your life if you want to be a film composer. Because, you know, like, nothing is precious. Nothing you do can be precious. I mean, everybody's going to pull it apart. You know, that's just going to be part of it. So yeah, I think it's just.
Is that what we mean? Do we think, is that what you sort of mean by failure? Like, I failed to create a piece of music that works for a film? Or is it failure like my career is not going anywhere kind of failure? Or is that what you sort of want us to talk about? Like that kind of failure?
It could be a bit of both. Yeah, it could be just kind of handling in any way.
For us, Saunder and I are workhorses, and I think all composers are and have to be. So, and I think every sort of podcast or like biography I've read about any composer has been like how hard they're willing to work and how many versions and how you can't dwell on because music is subjective and all this kind of thing. We hear that all the time. It's like, it's just sound waves hitting you and creating, right, some sort of emotional response. And this person next to me might feel the same way or might not. And it might be that this certain day where they're feeling like this or not like, and so maybe we send something to a director and they're just having a terrible day and they listen to it with one headphone and like, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, speaker. I don't know. Let's put it on the back burner, and we're like, oh man, we just spent a week on that. It's like, and it's like, seriously. And like, whereas another director might be, guys, I fucking love it. I love it. You're the best. And we're like, yeah, see, that's better. You know. But listen, but with the failure stuff, like, yeah, like sort of say, you don't have time. It's like, it's not. It can't possibly be your fault because you didn't. You know, you created something good enough to send to this director. That knowing, like, pressing send means like you must have done something right for you to think you're not sending something that you don't like, right? That you thought was terrible, are you?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It could be so layered. I mean, if you're forced to write a piece of music you don't really like because of direction, that can happen. But I don't know. That's a different sort of failure. It's like failure in yourself. But I mean, the quality of it should be, you should feel like this is what.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, you should be proud of it. You should know that it's good. And then if it doesn't work, you're like, all right. And then your ego, and like, as I said, we work really hard. So like, you have to just kind of reset and be like, all right, I'm gonna start again. Yeah. And you have to like try to remember, and this comes with experience, that like more often than not, when a director asks you to rewrite something, it's usually for a good reason. And even if you think you're a golden piece that you just wrote, it's going to be the theme, and it's just not working for the director or their team or whatever, or Netflix or whatever. And you just have to be like, all right. And more often than not, they're right. And they will, and you start on a new path with a new idea, and you're like, oh, I really took so much effort to start again. but really it takes you to another place. And so more often than not, it was a good idea. And you might have to do it 3 times or even 4 times or even 5 times. We just had something like that recently. And it was like 5 or 6 completely different versions of and different kinds of music. And still just not knowing and being like, the first one, I bet it's going to be the first one, because it's always the first one. And it sort of was in the end, but it doesn't matter how the story ends. But the point is that we just were like, all right, another version. It's like, what choice do we have? Just got to go for it. And then, you know, you're like, you get angry about it, or you're like frustrated, and God, the directors just, maybe they just don't know, you know.
We complain to each other all the time.
Oh, yeah.
My poor wife, too.
Yeah, director's crazy. But like, you have to just follow through. That's part of the project. It's part of the organic nature of the project, and just trying things out. There's dead ends, and then there's like little peepholes that you can go through, right? And you come, and in the end, you get there.
Yeah,
you just have to keep going.
Faith in the process, not the outcome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that's a perfect way to end our conversation today. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys. Honestly, I could sit here. I said yesterday as well, I could sit for hours listening to you guys talk. It's amazing, and I love your stuff, and I can't wait to do more stuff like this in the future. So I want to say a massive thank you from the whole Avid team to you guys as well. Thank you to all the listeners today, the viewers, for all the questions that have come in, and also want to say a massive thank you to the Avid team. We had people monitoring our social channels. We had Angel, Claire, Jeff, Gil, Greg, Dave, all on the Zoom chat today as well. So I want to say a massive thank you for myself, and I'm looking forward to more stuff in the future. And thank you, Danny. Thank you, Saunder. Appreciate it today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe and see you soon.
Bye, everybody.